Tweet with hashtag Surrey Decides. You can get involved with Stag Radio at AM 1350 and online as well. They're going to kill me for getting that wrong. Tonight we have the candidates for the Events and Training, Union Chair, Communications, VP Societies and Individual Development, and of course President. But to kick off the evening, I've actually had a few jokes sent to me, which hopefully you might enjoy. So the first one is, I went to a seafood disco last week. I pulled a muscle. You can get involved with Stag Radio. You can get involved with these aren't mine, so I can't claim responsibility. You know, somebody actually complimented me on my driving today. They left a note on the windscreen. It said parking fine. So I thought that was nice. My particular favourite is, why are seagulls called seagulls? Why? Because if they flew over bays, they'd be called bagels. So yeah, so that's the tone for the evening set. Right, in that case, I hope you enjoy the evening. I'd like to welcome to the stage Alan Sutherland, who's going to be chairing the first debate, hopefully. Alan's not here. Okay. More jokes. What do you get from spoilt cows? Soured milk, apparently. Okay, so we will be having the communications debate first. So please make sure that when you're in the audience, ask lots of questions. It's your chance to sort of make your point and challenge what these guys want to say. We've got Dominica Robo and Peter Sims up tonight, so it's definitely sort of make sure that you stand up, make your voice heard. Have we got an Alan about yet? No. Any jokes from the audience? I know this is sort of my go-to thing this evening. Any at all? No? Awesome. It seems that we are potentially on track to beat last year's record for voting. Now, I know voting opens up, I think it starts on Wednesday? Thursday morning. Okay, it starts Thursday morning at midnight. Okay, so I've just been told. But I think with what we've seen on Twitter, so we've been trending on Twitter for the last 2 nights with hashtag Surrey Decides, which has opened us up our Twitter feed to a large amount of spam porn bots and things as well, which has been very interesting. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on TV, but I will. But definitely get involved with Twitter, because it's really interesting to see sort of how people are voting or how they're looking at voting and getting some actual feedback live while things are going on. Now, for those in the audience and those online at home, you can, as I say, get involved with Stag Radio. They'll be commentating throughout the night on all the different bits and pieces, as well as sort of playing what's happening on stage as well. And I think they're sort of doing their own sort of Pundit's Corner element throughout sort of the commentary. StagTV, the Stag, and Stag Radio will also be downstairs doing Pundit's Corner between the candidates' question times themselves. So you'll be able to see that, I think, on the big screen for those in the audience, or those at home, it will be played to you directly. So again, keep up with the questions. You can challenge the pundits' views as well with the hashtag Surrey Decides. We've got the Stag sitting there on Twitter, making sure that we sort of get the input from Twitter as well. So, Alan! Steve! Can I just, while we're sort of just padding a little bit, who in the room is a candidate? That's interesting. I think there's potentially less hands up today than there were yesterday. So, of course, for those in the audience, we do have a microphone person as well. I believe that might be Leonie. So Leonie's going to be wandering around with a microphone. So cheer for Leonie. I think Leonie deserves a slightly bigger cheer. So yeah, if you've got a question, just raise your hand and Leonie will run over to you and give you the opportunity to make your voice sound like the gods. I've just lost my jokes. I do believe potentially Alan might have just walked in. No? Oh, okay. I've run out of jokes. I'm sorry. I get in trouble. In genuine fact, Twitter doesn't seem to like my jokes. Now, in the room last night, for those of you who were here, I know that there was a bit of a tumbleweed moment with a fair few points when I started talking. So I'm going to try and make sure that they aren't my jokes and they are other people's, because apparently mine aren't funny. Tell an anecdote. Okay, what am I up to? Okay, well, my name's Mike. I graduated last year from civil engineering, master's degree, and they brought me back because I'm impartial, and hopefully I can give you sort of a bit of an entertaining evening, apparently. You all look very bored with me. I'm very sorry. I'm not going to do a dance. I'm going to welcome Charlie to the stage. I think Charlie's going to do the chair of this debate. So everybody, raise round of applause for Charlie. Cool.
Okay.
So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage the candidates for Communications Officer, and good luck.
Okay, so... Right. So, let's run the VT first of all, see if we can do this properly this time. Please, thank you.
The candidate for Communications Officer, Peter Sims, Dominica Werbo.
Hello, Surrey. My name is Dominica Werbo, and I'm running for Communications Officer. And I would love to make your university experience even better. Thank you.
So, candidates, let's go. Okay, sorry for the delay. It's so smoky all of a sudden. I can't see the audience, so I assume there's people here. Sorry for the delay. Alan has gone to pick up the president of NUS. The trains are delayed. That's why I'm standing in for Alan. Before I start, there were some figures which were presented last night during the editor-in-chief session. These figures were provided to me by a member of Stag Media who's not involved in the committee, and these figures were wrong. I've been provided with a clarification. The 13 visitors that I said was the total, was in fact 17, and it was a peak, not a total. And there have been over 300 unique visitors a day on listeners to Stag Radio. So that is a clarification. Can we have a round of applause for Stag Radio and all the media, everything they do. Okay, without further ado, we're moving on to the communications officers. So, as you weren't able to introduce yourselves on there, do you want to very briefly introduce yourselves? Just tell people what your names are. Just one key policy point, please. Start off, Peter.
Hello, I'm Peter Sims. I'm standing for comms officer, obviously. Transparency equals democracy. If it's not transparent, it's not democracy. So it's not democratic. So communication's quite important.
My name's Dominica Werbo, and I would like to make your university experience better, and I want to focus on promotion, possibly, and transparency as well.
Okay. So the preset question for this is becoming quite familiar, this routine. The 2013 to 14 communications officer, so this year, resigned in January. The executive committee voted by a majority to not replace this post holder. How will you make sure that next year, if you resigned, you would be missed? Dominique.
Well, I would like to work with the executive to build a positive relationship. So, for example, with VP societies to promote society events, make them more successful. For example, I took part in Surrey Arts Live in December, and it was a really, really great show. But I reckon there was some poor communication because the advertising was very last minute, and few students actually turned up, and it could have been much, much better. And so I thought that could improve this by a society events calendar, perhaps. So if I had any other concerns about the union and how it's managed, planned and organised, how the advertising is done, I would like to speak to the chair.
Okay, Peter?
Well, I don't know from what... Okay, so there's three key things that I think I could do that would mean that I wasn't missed if I resigned. feedback to the rest of the union, so that's both sabbatical officers and part-time officers, on how their communication for events and publicity, things like, as you were saying, Surrey Arts Live, is perceived from the student perspective, and the fact that you type union exec into the search bar and doesn't come up with any minutes and stuff like this. A button or a page on the union website that's, what the hell's this union thing all about? That explains, how there's information about what the union's made up of, but not why it's relevant to you and how you can get involved and how you can propose something. And that links on to the last thing, which is a system. So, if you think, the union should support this campaign, or the union should campaign to try and change this, or the union should, I think this is an issue. So there's a system where you can, talk to one person and they can help you follow it through to go from one person proposing it to the union supporting it and acting on it.
All right, thank you, Peter. Peter, in your manifesto, and you've just alluded to it here as well, you say that the union is not democratic if the students do not understand its democratic process, right? We're sitting here on the third evening of the biggest question time we've ever had. Rubik's filled with people, hundreds watching online, hopefully hundreds listening based on previous figures, and a record-breaking number of candidates standing. We also have a predicted record-breaking number of voters. How do you argue that students do not understand democracy?
I don't argue that they don't understand democracy in general. So things that currently are, you say to people, lots of people who are involved in societies and involved in the union to some degree, I have spoken to, and they go, I want to get the union to support this. How do I go about that? I want, you say, you need to put it to exec in a motion, and they go, what? What's exec? How does that fit in? I've tried to understand the kind of the structure of the union and how the trustees fit in with the sabbatical officers and the CEO and all this. And I spoke to the current president to try and see whether I was, had the right idea. And she had to bring me up on some points about how I'd not quite understood it right. So if I've tried to understand it and still hadn't quite got it right, how can you expect the average student who maybe isn't as involved in the union as I am to have an understanding?
How can you? How will you enable that?
By having a button on the website that goes to a page, possibly with a short video that explains. There's that has a structure of who, and has a this is who you talk to approach.
How many people do you think will watch a video that says this is how the union executive works and it's a structure? Do you think people are interested in that? Do you think this is a problem of interest or a problem of...
It's not supposed to be entertaining.
It needs to be entertaining enough for people to watch it.
When you get, when you first come to the union, there's a, you have the talk, in the freshers talk about explains what the union. At that point, you have no involvement in the union. You don't know, you've heard about it exists, but that's it. When you come to get, you want to get more involved, when you go, the union should really support that, there needs to be some way you can direct people and go to that bit of the website and it will explain it.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're just
Peter.
constantly saying the same thing over and over again to loads of people.
Dominica, you say on your manifesto that there are several events that you feel have the potential to be really successful, right? Have been really poorly communicated. Let's be specific. Give us some examples. Which specific events do you mean? Exactly what improvements will you implement?
Well, I was given the example of Surrey Arts Live, for example, and also there was events such as I think it was the dance ball, so I think Latin dance ball, and I wanted to find out about it. Maybe I would like to go to that, and I tried to search on Facebook, couldn't find it. So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to, instead of just having the main Rubik's events on the main union Facebook page, having smaller events as well, making them more popular, opening them up to a bigger audience. I feel that would be very beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question here that's just been submitted. Do you have a pen?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So you got some paper, you got a pen. This won't take too long. Can you write down, please, how many people you think are currently in the union's communications team? So this is obviously based on your research and... no, the communications team specifically, so employed staff.
Oh, employed staff, not... Yeah.
So, communications, not the communications officer, that's currently 0. Okay, we ready?
Sure.
Okay, so do you want to both say your numbers at the same time? That's stupid, right? Peter?
3.
3.
Say 4.
What have you written?
5. Yeah.
You've written 5. Okay, 5. You don't get away with that.
Sorry.
So, it is in fact 1. It is in fact 1 person. And she's sitting at the back, and I'm sure she's very grateful for you for that. So can we get a round of applause for Lisa, who does that on her own? I know staff don't exist in the elections, but the communications team does, just for that. Okay, so moving on. Quite a general question. People sometimes get a little bit peeved about us going specifically at the candidates, specifically at Surrey. Generally, in your opinion, as a communications officer, someone who hopefully has experience and passion in this kind of area, there's been suggestions that I'm sure a lot of you read that Facebook will soon die out like a disease. Do you agree that Facebook will die out?
I don't think so. I think maybe people are trying to make smaller circles, trying to be more private about their life, because Facebook is quite big and you're showing a lot of your life to the world. But I think it's important to have connections. And I think Facebook, even like for events, you're communicating really...
Do you think you'll die out?
No, I don't.
Do you think you'll die out, Peter?
Not anytime soon.
I don't really think that's relevant to communications officer directly. I mean, Facebook is
It's relevant. It's relevant now because I'm asking you. So let's.
Facebook is one tool out of many tools available for the university union to communicate. Stag Media being a major tool, but not the only tool.
Peter, answer the question, please. The union uses media, Facebook, the website, newsletters, newsletters via emails, Twitter, blogging, etc. It's just been sent to me. Thanks for that. In order to communicate. The question to you is, do you think it'll die out?
I don't know. I don't.
You don't know? Okay.
Have an opinion.
You don't have an opinion. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone got any question? So this is communications officer. Do you feel that communications are absolutely brilliant, perfect as they are? You're all here today, so that's being communicated clearly to you somehow. However, there are some empty seats, and it's obviously not just today we're talking about. So anyone got any questions about that? Is everyone perfectly happy? To these individuals. Question over there? It's kind of a slightly uncertain question. I assure you, you're definitely asking a question. Leonie, run. Over there.
This is a question for both of you, particularly Dom, actually. Dom,
do you mind asking
can I ask
to both of them? Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, it was from a point Dom made. Dom mentioned that she was thinking about a calendar specifically for societies on events. If the cost was too prohibitive to perhaps print this in the same way we do the Rubik's calendar, how else would you get this across?
Okay, so if that is a very specific question for Dom, so I'll allow a specific question on Peter's manifesto afterwards. So, Dom.
I think maybe if that's not possible, the society calendar could be printed in the Stag, so like the middle page, and make it a monthly thing. And I know there is a section in the Stag about society events, but it's quite lengthy. And if you just want to know what's actually happened, oh, maybe I'll go to that. It's really useful to just know, okay, that's happening, I'll check that out. And if not, then publish it online. And again, publish it on the Facebook, the main union page.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Peter's manifesto? It's probably a good idea if someone does, or I'm going to ask one. Someone? Please ask Peter a question. Show Peter you care and you've read his manifesto. You're all here. Peter, where's your manifesto?
It's twice in there.
Oh, yeah, Peter's is the one that's in here twice. So I'll go to one of the Peters.
It's right, the first page of manifestos.
Right. There we go.
There
So, Peter, see, that's the confusion, you see. I was looking for your manifesto and I found Peter Davis. Peter Davis, the first name. Peter, it's a question that's already been asked to Peter Davis. I think it's fair to ask it to you as well. What happens if Peter Davis is not elected? Just for context to everyone, there's a joint manifesto here. So Peter's manifesto is joint between two candidates. Clearly, the elections are separate for these positions. So it doesn't... Is it fair to say that it doesn't say which policies are yours? It just kind of merges the two. So, which policies are yours? What is going to happen if the other Peter's not elected?
Okay, so the reason we stood as a slate, which is I believe what it's called, was because we agreed on a lot of similar things, and we feel what I could do as comms officer kind of links into what he could do as ethics environment officer. So. I think there needs to be a system for people raising issues. He has some specific issues, such as the divestment campaign, that he feels should be raised within the union. So if I was elected and he wasn't, which I think the circumstance we're talking about, the principles obviously we both agree with, I would have to concentrate on the bits that facilitate the communication, and then whoever was ethics environment officer would then be the person who pushes the ethical environment bits through that system if they choose to, or whatever they choose to do.
So you're not bothered if Peter's not elected?
What?
I'm just playing. You don't have to answer that. It's okay. Start off easy. We got a very long night ahead, and we got presidents at the end. So let's save ourselves. I have to mention that there are some comments coming in on Twitter. Some of them are inappropriate. That's usually funny. Quite often that is funny. But when these are of a racial nature, and the person who's written this knows exactly what I'm talking about, you are a student. You are identifiable. If you are doing hashtag Surrey Decides, then you are representing the university. So bear that in mind when you are writing things about that. Don't mind people being offensive towards me, but if you're going to do that, it's quite a strange comment. You might want to go on Twitter. Okay, so any questions from the crowd? Let's warm up these candidates. They're up here. They've come. First session. It's always really difficult starting off. Trust me. We've got a question over here about communications. So can this be to both of them, please? Thank you.
So in light of yesterday's discussion about rag media, that could be a new thing. So rag lost a lot of money through events, and people were questioning the money that's spent on the media. Do you feel that the website is really worth the sort of 200 grand, I think, approximately, that is spent into it? Do you think it's worth that? Because I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned the usefulness of the website and how you'd promote democracy.
Can you frame there's a few things there. Can you just pose one question? Is it about whether the website's worth the money? Or
website, is it worth 200k? Yes or no?
The figure is less than half of that, just to clarify. The figure is less than half of that.
I'm just going by what I was...
That's okay. I've learnt to check my figures, and it's less than half of that. That's also a diplomatic way of saying that.
So it's 100k?
Oh, it's less than £100,000. Okay, so we'll go first of all to Peter.
I think the website's quite an important tool that the union make a lot of uses. I mean, they rely on it as a way of at the moment as a way of publicising, as all the meeting minutes, everything, in theory is on the website. So I'd struggle to see what they'd do if they got rid of the website completely. So, but I'm assuming you're talking about should they spend a little bit less money on it and spend more money somewhere else. I think there's a lot of things, and I mean, whether they put more money into adding new features to the website, or whether they put money in the future, because the amount spent is spent, into making the website as it is slicker, and making so when you search things they come up, is probably.
All right, thanks, Peter. Bear in mind there are 5,000 visits a week, and there are stats that say people are spending longer and longer on the website recently. So,
this is the union website.
Union website, okay. ussU.co.uk/decides-live.
Okay. Okay. I think that a website presence is very important. Technological, obviously, I think definitely we need a website. Every union has a website. But I think it definitely needs improvement. When I'm on it, it's really hard to navigate. Like for the past 2 days, I couldn't even get on the homepage, and obviously that shouldn't be happening.
Is not getting on the homepage to do with navigation of the website, or is it to do with? And it was what happened? What was wrong?
It just wouldn't. Nothing would show up.
It wouldn't load.
Yeah, it just would not.
To log in.
Yeah, and that as well.
There's various issues that I think need to be raised to do with, in certain circumstances, the website doesn't quite function as it's supposed to, and I think part of the comms role is to feed that back to the people who can actually change things on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you, I think you should vote me for comms officer, because I agree with these two guys. So lots of agreement. So please don't vote for me. I'm not running these elections. You can, however, vote for Ron. So, are you here to criticise? Well, I'm not asking that question. Sorry. Okay, it was about whether you're here to criticise the website. Clearly not. That's the question I asked. So, what can you bring from your own experience, from your own personality, to the editorial board? You'll be sitting on the editorial board. Very important Dom?
Well, I'm quite proactive. Before the uni, obviously I'm a first-year student, so I don't have that much experience. But I'm currently working at the union, and I think that I could closely work with the executive,
So what experience do you have that will assist you on the editorial board specifically?
Well, I was a prefect at school. We had meetings, discussed ideas, and
Why are you running for communications officer?
because I want to improve the communications between. Because I think it's not good enough at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. Peter?
So what experience do I have that would help on the editorial board?
Yeah.
I was president of a society last year, so I have some experience of SharePoint and how it works and what's harder and what's easier. So I have a bit of perspective on the feasibility of doing certain things and other things. I've have involvement in. I've had direct communication with some of the leadership of the university. I've had phone calls with the director of comms and people to progress other issues. So I feel the links with the senior leadership of the university could prove useful.
Yeah.
Probably two main points.
Okay. Any questions? Any pressing questions? I've got a couple here if no one's that desperate to ask any. Okay, so on the topic of people trolling, as it's now being referred to as, if people do troll, and if it goes over the line of being absolutely hilarious to offensive, which is very fine, what will you do to combat, say, anonymous trolls who can't be located without extensive police investigation, that kind of thing? First of all, to Peter.
I'd have thought the main focus of the comms officer's time should be towards, improving the communication stuff they've got. If you said, as you stated, there isn't much we can do about it, is it possibly?
Is there much you can do about it? That's my question.
You seem to suggest that it require the circumstance you suggested required police investigation, and therefore surely that's better job for the police and the best use for the comms officer's time.
So you do nothing about it?
Well, I would progress taking it forward to the police if that was felt necessary by the board of the university.
What would you do to assure the student community that you were not just saying, "Oh, it's with the police now, don't worry"? These troll comments are still coming in. You're sitting on exec and you're saying, "Oh, I can't deal with this." What are you going to do? That's the question.
Transparency. If you're doing things, then make sure that information of what you're doing, when you last contacted people, where you're supposed to get an update on what's going on, is available to students.
I lost point of the question. So I'll go to Dom. Dom, see if you can handle this one. So we have trolling comments coming in. People are writing whatever. Exec is horrible. I can't swear, so I can't really think of any great trolls. And it starts to become offensive, and someone on exec says to you, "I think something needs to be done about this." Okay, same situation as Peter. They can't be tracked to their name, but it is causing stress in the student community. What are you going to do?
Perhaps appeal, maybe call a meeting, discuss why that is happening. Why are these comments coming in? Are we doing something wrong? If we are, obviously try to affect that and change that. But if it is anonymous, like, we don't have that much power to.
Okay. So, both of you, what's the difference between this role and the editor-in-chief?
I think the editor-in-chief is perhaps more involved in StagTV, Stag Radio. Obviously, I want to use that, but I think I might be the link between the students and the media. So I'll be bringing in feedback, perhaps trying to make the living room more popular, because I went down into the living room and Stag Radio was playing in there, and it was great. It was great music, but there was not a big audience, and I think Danny's a great audience, so I might be that link between.
Okay, so that's the difference for you. What's the difference for you between the roles?
So the union has various methods for communicating from the union to students. One of those is Stag Media. There are various others, Facebook website, a lot of them. And then the other part of communications is communications from students back to the union, whether that be in forms of ideas, feedback on what things students support, what students don't support. So the Stag Media and the editor-in-chief as kind of the figurehead of that, shall I say, is responsible for that part of the many different ways the union communicates. So so I would work with them as the leader of that part of it on the bits of communication that they do for the union.
Okay. Who here knows for absolute certain who they're going to vote for in this election? Can you see that for the cameras people at home? That's a very, very small minority. So you need to win these votes because that's hopefully relatively representative. So, Peter, first of all, tell us one thing why we should vote for you.
Okay. There are various big issues going along, facing our generation and future generations. And the union provides a lot of services and provides a lot of societies and sports clubs and all these kinds of things. But we're not, the union isn't just a university-funded student support service. It's not just.
So why should we vote for you?
Because the primary role of the union is campaigning on things not just welfare and education, but on general issues. And there needs to be a system so students can raise issues outside of those things and take those through so the union
Okay.
campaign.
So why you? Can't Dom do all that?
I don't know whether Dom can do all of that. I'm offering to do it. Surely Dom has to answer the question about whether she thinks she can do it.
Absolutely. Dom, why should we vote for you?
I think I got quite a few ideas with what I want to do. I think perhaps improving student satisfaction.
So we should vote for you because you have ideas. Peter's just given us ideas. Why should we vote for you? Rather than Ron?
Well,
or Peter?
I think that I will try my best to implement those ideas because a lot of people can say, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that, and I really do want to work with editor-in-chief, VP societies to actually implement those ideas. For example, I was in a lecture theatre and someone mentioned, what about a Surrey Learn app?
Right. Okay. We're going away from the question now. Bear in mind, this is the communications officer position. Can you communicate to us why? I'll try and flip this around. This sometimes works, sometimes this flops, and then we'll just go home. Forget it's ever happened. Why should we not vote for Peter? Because that is a decision that nearly everyone here hasn't made yet. One sentence.
Okay. Maybe I'll aim at the manifesto. It's quite environmentally orientated. Greenpeace.
Okay. That's your one sentence.
Yeah.
Peter.
Okay. I don't want to be offensive in any way. What experience do you have of working with SharePoint? What experience do you have?
These are rhetorical questions, right?
Yeah. What experience do you have of working with the leadership of the university, the management team of the university? What experience do you have of campaigning? Campaigning being one of the key things I think.
Have you read Dom's manifesto?
Yes.
Have you read Peter's manifesto?
I have.
Okay. What's one of Dom's main points?
My impression of...
Your one rival. This isn't societies, there's not 9 of you.
I thought that was
welfare. You are correct, well done. So, what's one of her main points?
The main points that I got from Don's manifesto is to do with improving the student experience and better communicating and better transparency kind of stuff.
That's a safe answer because that's pretty much what everyone puts on when they're running for this. What's one of Peter's main? Got to heat this up. Everyone looks like falling asleep.
He wanted to divest.
Do you know what that means?
Exactly, I don't, and I think.
Would you like me to explain?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
We would not.
And I read also that he wanted to create a few videos of explaining the whole system, electoral And
Right, okay. So these are our two candidates for the position of communications officer. It's always really difficult to go first. That was the first one, so we get a round of applause. We're going next to Pundit's Corner. Coming up next is Union Chair and Events and Trading.
Hi, I'm Andy Smith, this year's Editor-in-Chief. We want to apologise for some of the coverage from last night's Sorry Decides. Some of the comments made by a couple of the Editor-in-Chief pundits about the executive team were outside of their role as impartial commentators. These views are not... Hi, I'm Andy Smith, this year's Editor-in-Chief. We want to apologise for some of the coverage of last night's Sorry Decides. Some of the comments made by a couple of the Editor-in-Chief pundits were made about the current executive team were made outside of their role as an impartial commentator, and these views were not representative of Stag Media. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Andy. As I said, I'm David. Welcome here to Pundit's Corner. We've just seen there the question time for Communications Officer. We are being streamed live on Stag Media. You can listen live to Stag Radio via 1350 AM and online. And joined with the pundits, we've got Sam, Ollie, Tony and Osama. Now, Tony, you are NUS President. What were your thoughts on the debate that went on?
I thought there were some really interesting points, particularly, I guess, around campaigning and around how how necessary it is to be able to communicate between different audiences, so different groups of students and the union, and also the university itself. And I guess what was really interesting for me is I think that it's really important that the candidates maybe differentiate themselves from each other a little bit more. I think it is really clear from the room that people are undecided about who they want to vote for, and I guess that maybe the candidates need to kind of figure out exactly what it is that's made them want to run in this election, because clearly they both really want it. And I know that these debates can be really intimidating and difficult, but I guess they really need to think about what it is that's their kind of unique selling point as a candidate.
Yeah, and Ollie, did you think the same? Because I think there was a lot of... They sort of said similar answers, I think, in a lot of questions.
Yeah, the risk of just agreeing with everything that was said, absolutely. The problem with this position is that no candidate ever comes up with some sort of broad communication strategy, right? So these guys are all focusing on social media, on Surrey, the Surrey medias that we have here, and I've pluralised it. I'm going to get in trouble on Twitter for that. What I'd like to know is how these guys are going to go out externally and represent the university to the Surrey Advertiser, BBC Surrey, to those national networks that they could potentially get coverage in. When I was an officer here, we ran the USSU 24 campaign. Osama will probably remember that. That got good coverage locally. What I want to know is how these guys are going to do the same thing, and we didn't really hear that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you picked up on the medias there.
Media, not medias.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Which was, we had the Editor-in-Chief debate yesterday. Obviously picked up on the three media. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Student media.
Student media.
Worked hard to get it to student media,
yeah.
just keep it that way.
Do you feel that they are a good way of communicating with the students? Because obviously we've got the TV, radio and the Stag.
Absolutely. I think if the student media is utilised properly, it's the best weapon that any student union and university can have, because we as a union know how to communicate best with our students, and having the student media led by students is the best example of how we can do it.
And Tony, do you feel there was any way that they put their views across on how they were best to do that?
I think it is a difficult one, because there was obviously the question about what's the difference between the communications officer and the editor-in-chief, which I think is an interesting question. But I guess there's something here about how you communicate at a grassroots level with students, and also I think to your point about communities, how do you ensure that there's a good communication link between students, the union, communities, the institution, and not necessarily just people who use student media or who interact with student media. And I guess a lot of that actually is about reaching out to student groups that maybe don't get very much interaction with activities or sports clubs and societies or student media, maybe people who are mature students or student parents who kind of have unique needs. And I guess it would be really interesting to know what the candidates for this role would do to reach out to students who maybe aren't your kind of average 18 to 21-year-old student on campus.
Yeah, so Sam from the Stag, what have people been saying on Twitter about this one?
Well, it seems that there's not that much enthusiasm and people are quite bored with these candidates. people lack enthusiasm. They think the candidates lack enthusiasm. There's no particular candidate that seems to be favoured. I've seen Ron. Someone say they prefer Ron. And it seems that people are more shocked with other factors which aren't necessarily to do with the candidate, such as the costs spent on the website, for example.
So, Salma, is there a way that these two candidates could now go out there and perhaps differentiate themselves from each other?
Absolutely. I think they haven't missed their time. They need to be out there to communicate to as many people as they can, to listen to what they're saying, what they need in order for means of communication, which is something they should have done before actually this debate, but nevertheless it's not too late. In order to be in the position next year, you need to really work hard and understand what is it you want to do and how you can do it.
Yeah, the website got mentioned there, Ollie, as perhaps needing improvement. Is that something you feel that they've got to focus on?
No, it's something that has been talked about for 3 to 4 years at this institution and needs to be put to bed eventually. The guys are not expected to be IT consultants at the end of the day, so I think it's unfair to focus on that. So I think that issue needs to be put to bed. But one thing I do want to raise is the idea of this. I think for a communications officer to run on a joint platform or a slate was probably not the best strategy, actually. This guy, Peter, is there to distinguish himself. He's there to communicate as an individual, as he will do, if he is elected to this position. I thought that was a bit of a silly move, actually. So
is that one thing that you feel might distinguish between them, the fact that he hasn't really said what his main points are?
Well, nobody can find his manifesto. Charlie was thumbing through and he couldn't find it. So, it's going to be tough for people. The guy's supposed to be a communicator and nobody can find his manifesto, so he might struggle on that basis.
Dominica has mentioned in her manifesto that perhaps some of the decisions the union makes has not become too clear to the students. I don't know if you want to pick up on this, Osama.
I've actually made a note on that. I think there's a lot of information out on the website, and we worked really hard to ensure that there is as much information as possible. A survey has been done on what students would like to see. All the information you'd like is on the website. It's just finding it, and most of the time when you type on the search button, it comes up. I don't know what means of communication that they've been trying to find, or what is it that they really want to know about the union. For example, it's been mentioned that people don't know what the union's about, and I think that is a huge mistake. People do know what the union's about, and our officers spend the first couple of weeks introducing the students to the union and explaining why we're here. And we do get a lot of people who do come for our advice, not just the Rubik's events, but the things that we're really here to represent.
Yeah, well, Peter mentioned in his manifesto that he's going to make a video to tell students, as he also mentioned in question time, to tell them what the union does. Tony, do you think that's really necessary? Because I think a lot of people do know what the union is and what it's about.
I think it's an interesting idea. I guess that anything that you can do that kind of reiterates that message and gets it out there, the better. I guess the problem is actually communication for any organisation, whether it's a student union or an institution or NUS. Communication is always difficult to get to 100% of people, and that is the reality of what communication is. If it was easy, you wouldn't have a communications officer role, right?
So what do you guys do? Because you get this criticism all the time. I remember running as an NUS delegate, and constant criticism, the NUS doesn't communicate. What do you guys do to tackle that?
It's an absolutely ongoing piece of work, and it is really difficult when you represent 7 million people to be able to speak to 7 million people constantly every day.
It's always
without putting that ahead of your campaigning activity, or doing that at the expense of other things is really difficult. I guess that you shouldn't get kind of. I think it's probably wrong to suggest that a video would solve all your problems, because at the end of the day, people have still got to make the effort to go and watch that video, and are they going to be making any more effort than they would to go and search for something on a website?
Yeah. So currently the union doesn't have a communications officer. Is this something that because we can't really distinguish between them? Do we need a communications officer in the union at the moment?
I personally haven't been around this year, so I don't really know what has the communication officer done at the beginning of the year and what he hasn't or she hasn't done throughout the year. But as someone who's not on the Surrey campus, I tell you that I do know what's going on in the union, because I have an interest in knowing. Yeah. So I do go on the website and actually read the blogs and what's happening about the union and all the awards we've been winning. So probably because I know how to work the website, but also I think what's important is that the people have to have an interest, and as a union you need to sell that interest to the students. So that's the really the point that any officer needs to focus on.
Okay, and going back to the Twitter, have you any more on the differentiation between the two candidates?
Not yet. There's not been much tweeting at all since the Pundits Corner. No.
So people
boring everyone.
A lot of people seem to like. Lots of people seem to like Osama being back though. A bit of Osama's going on there.
Dominica, I think it was mentioned about a society's events calendar. Now, Ollie, do you think that's because obviously we've got the events planner as it is? Would a different one for societies make much of a difference, and would people read it?
No.
I'd like to add a point to that. If you go on the website, actually, you can see, unless it's been changed from last week, you can see on there's an events planner, and you can actually go to the societies planner. So it's not that it's not there, it's the effort of the societies to be able to update it and to put all their events there. So it's something for the VP societies to work with the communications.
And would it be that perhaps people don't know it's there, so perhaps they should get it?
As committee members, everyone gets trained and get told about it. Whether they use it or not, it's down to the societies themselves.
But is it students that don't know that it's there? So that's why they don't look at it and people don't go to the events?
Well, I wouldn't. Well, the student planner, Jade, who does the student planner, along with Aaron, who's the marketing officer, accepts any society events to go on the planner. You need to be organized to be able to plan ahead that you're going to have an event on the 5th of August, which we're not here. That's just August isn't my birthday. But if you're having an event in March, let's say, you need to know back in January to be able to have it on the planner for it to be printed.
So would communication in that sense of getting things sorted in time and then out there in advance, do you think that's something, Tony, that perhaps needs to be better communicated?
I guess so. I mean, I think that these things are always really difficult, and actually, I think going back to something that you said about these people aren't expected to be IT consultants. Actually, there's a huge profession made out of marketing and communication, and that's why it's really difficult, and that's why people get paid to do it as a career. And actually, I think a lot of the time when it comes to, and particularly going back to what you said about what does NUS do, a lot of what we've done recently is get advice from external specific marketing consultants and organisations about how to do that better. And I'm not a marketing expert, and thankfully that's why I'm not in charge of NUS's communication and marketing. But I think maybe that's the thing is people need to make really informed decisions based on kind of professional advice, not necessarily just making things up that sound good on a manifesto.
I just want to make a point. The problem with that is obviously it costs money, but also one of the points to take from that. Everybody was talking about social media, everybody was talking about the website, nobody was talking about face-to-face engagement, nobody was talking about getting out, leafleting, doing the pop-up union that used to happen. Nobody was talking about that, knocking on the doors of the halls, going to find the people in Hazel Farm and Manor Park who aren't engaged, the student nurses, all of those disengaged groups. So maybe not anymore, but they were. So these guys need to come up with a strategy that says we're going to go out face to face, talk to people, get our message out through other channels, other than social media and the website. It's not all about that. Let's have a conversation for a change.
Yeah, because face to face is probably one of the best ways to getting to know the students, what their opinions are, as that's an important role of feeling how the students are feeling. So obviously you can take surveys, but people don't always say how they feel. Absolutely. If you go face to face with people, they're more likely to give their opinions, don't you think?
And not just that, it's actually easier because they don't feel there's a barrier, there's no form, there's nothing. Actually being out there all the time, or obviously as a part-time student, part-time officer, you wouldn't be able to be out there all the time, but actually whenever you get a chance to be out there and to listen to the people, not just be like, oh sorry, I'm clocking off, I'm not working. It doesn't work like that with any officer role. It's your role for the year. If you're not ready for it, then you're in the wrong election.
As they're only in for a year, is there a lot that they really can change as a communications officer?
I guess for me, a lot of being an elected officer is about culture change, and a lot of it is about, like you said, about having those ideas and saying, do you know what, we're not going to focus 90% of our time on social media, we're going to go out and talk to students, and I'm not going to be in the office every day, I'm going to be out knocking on people's doors, speaking to them in their lectures, when they're eating, when they're out in the evening in the student union, and actually making that kind of cultural decision as an officer, I think is really important. And that's why we have elected officers, because otherwise, you know, we could, any student union could kind of just be run with no kind of political direction or no, you know, with nobody kind of setting the agenda. But that's why this process is really important. So I think you can make a massive difference, but you have to really know what you want to achieve.
Okay. Any final say from Twitter?
No, well, earlier on, it seems that, and I've seen this as well, that when you were talking about the Society's planner, I actually saw one last year.
Yeah.
But no one really knew about it. I just saw it because I just found it somewhere. But that was brought up earlier as well. But I've not seen it much this year. I don't think other people have seen it much this year.
Thank you. That's it from Pundit's Corner for Communications Officer. Up next, we have Events and Trading and Union Chair.